Hi there, my name's Imogen. I'm the Learning and Volunteers Coordinator at Kettles Yard Art Gallery, and I'm leading a project based in a special educational needs school based around co-production called Art Now. And I'm sharing this as a soapbox, not because I've got lots of answers, but because the project has raised lots of questions that have resonated with things that have come up in the first two sharing space discussions. So I'd like to throw my questions into the mix. So firstly, just to put Kettles Yard in a bit of context. This is Kettles Yard. It's the University of Cambridge's modern and contemporary art gallery. It's got two main parts. These are some domestic cottages that are filled with furniture of everyday life and a collection of modernist art, and also lots of beautiful things from nature, whether it's shells or plants or pebbles that have been carefully, minutely arranged in this space. It was the home of a couple who welcomed people into their home to encounter art in a really different way. So the house remains the same as they left it to the university, but then we also have contemporary art spaces which have a constantly changing programme of contemporary artists who exhibit for a few months with an accompanying programme. Kettles Yard has a really long history of projects based around co-production in our learning and community teams. We've done a lot with young people through the National Circuit programme. We've been running a project entirely built around co-production in our local community called Open House for a number of years. And we have also integrated that within our schools programme whenever we've had the budget for longer term projects. So this is an example of us working with our local academy, North Cambridge Academy, and working with a group of students who were a core group who took the lead in shaping a project that worked across the whole school, recruiting an artist who made a number of interventions in the school. And together they co-designed this alternative learning space, so transformed a classroom into a bright blue playground. The project that we're working on now builds on that way of working with schools, encouraging and empowering students to take the lead in their own creative projects. But we're testing out what that looks like in a special educational needs context. So we're working with our local special educational needs school, Castle School, which is just down the road from Kettles Yard and has students from nursery all the way through to sixth form. And we're asking a lot of questions about how we can support those students to shape an artist residency, so recruiting an artist and then working with that artist to shape the way creativity works across their school. So they're going to be working towards a major artwork for their school, but also really thinking about how student voice can shape their own creative programme as a longer term legacy for the school. So there've been a lot of logistical questions to work out about how to do this project. We've spent the first 6 months of the project really getting to know the school, getting to know how they work, and inviting the students and the staff to get to know us at Kettles Yard. And one of the challenges, as you can imagine, has been the way that COVID has completely changed ways of working. When we originally applied for funding for this project from the Ragdoll Foundation, we were hoping to work with the school student council model, which had student representatives from across all the different ages and the different styles of learning, whether that's formal learners or sensory learners or semi-formal learners, who would then represent their class and their class's interests, but also their class's way of communicating and learning, and together work as a group to shape the project. And that's proved to be completely impossible because of COVID and the challenges of pulling people out of different bubbles and having a timetable where they could all be in the same place at the same time. So we've had to work really closely with the school to understand how we can develop a new way that's sustainable for the school. And the school started doing a lot more digitally as the best way to get students together. So they, together with us, we've decided to do a digital assembly. So every Tuesday morning, they've done an assembly, and that's now entirely based around student voice and around choices. So supporting the students to be making choices and encouraging them to start small and then to make bigger and bigger choices in shaping how they want the project to work and how they want their school to be run. So that's been fantastic. There's been a lot of progress to work out how we can embed these conversations within the school's daily routine. But now that we're there, it's just left us with even more questions and challenges. one thing that I really took from the first Engage co-production session was thinking about co-production being so often based around storytelling and the role that the visual arts can play in that. And I found that really powerful, but also quite challenging, because how do we go about storytelling with students who often are non-verbal or semi-verbal or pre-verbal? How do we enable them to tell their own story within that context? And how do we learn to listen and to understand how they communicate? And what are the opportunities that the visual arts can bring to support and really enable and learn from the voices of learners who often communicate by pointing at images or by using gestures? What can that bring to this kind of relationship? A lot of our students are used to making choices, but they're very often binary choices. Would you like this or this? How do we build on that choice making to encourage them to have opportunities to be bolder and more creative in setting the agenda, whilst also keeping to routines that are really important and that build a sense of structure and safety and enable them to manage the challenges of lots of different ways of working, which can be quite overwhelming for students whose kind of sense of well-being is very much built around one particular routine. Another question that we've been really thinking about is structures of power. Obviously, there are a number of structures of power within this project. Kettles Yard is an institution with our own hierarchies. A school, as we all know, can be incredibly hierarchical, even a school that can be based around openness and responding to the learner's needs. And how do we really upend that? We want to be listening to the school and learning as much as possible from how they are used to working with the students, but then also being open to completely throwing that out the window and taking risks. And that's quite a difficult balance to strike in this project. And what assumptions are we all bringing to that? And how possible is it going to be to really hand power over to the students in this context? And what will be the things that hold us back from doing that? And how many of those will be justified? Another question we'll be asking as we try to be spreading the power as evenly as possible in the many different relationships in this project are, what are the different currencies that are at play? In a project, when you've got lots of different partners and stakeholders, often money is a major currency, but what are the other values that we're all bringing and trading on that perhaps we haven't even articulated? And once we've recognized what those are, what shared values we have, what different approaches we have, whether that's Kettles Yard or the artist or the school or the students, how do we start talking about them and using that as a starting point for really building something that everyone is equally invested in and equally able to articulate their own ideas and responses to take agency within this relationship? This is just the beginning of lots of the questions that we're asking, and we're very much not presenting this with answers, but just as a desire to carry on the conversation. So if anyone is working on anything similar or has done in the past or is going to in the future, please do get in touch. Drop me a line, Imogen at Kettles Yard. We'd love to talk with you, whether that's me or my colleague Karen or the artist who we're working with. But thanks very much for your time.